All right, welcome back. You're watching The Money Show on ET Now. We're having a conversation that's not the easiest one to have, especially if you're having it with your family, but it is a necessary conversation to have in the larger scheme of things as far as your personal finances are concerned. We're talking about succession planning. We've already spoken about the mistakes that people make. We've spoken about the current context, the regulations that currently affect your succession planning. We're going to talk about the way forward, a few more legal aspects, and perhaps a few changes that can be hopefully brought about to make the process easier. Joining me is Pramod Rao, the Group General Counsel at ICICI Bank. Thank you so much, Mr. Rao, for taking the time.
My pleasure. My pleasure to be here on The Money Show.
I want to start by asking you about the white paper that you have worked on, and this is with the association of with ARIA basically, and it's called Reimagining Nominations, Making Succession Smoother and Simpler. What are the issues that you've highlighted that exist with the current system, and what should change, Mr. Rao?
Thanks. I think there are two or three aspects which struck me very much as I dived deeper into this with Arya. And I think one of them is that different financial assets have at different points in time evolved the nomination process and so on. Harsh already dealt with the benefits of nomination and how it can allow access to the nominees in case of death of an individual. But these disparate norms are actually amongst the biggest irritants that financial consumers or their families rather face when it comes to claims being lodged. Similarly, there are limitations. For instance, a bank account can have only a single nominee. A demat account can have up to 3 nominees. And really speaking, our financial assets don't reflect the reality of our families. Our families may not be limited to 2 or 3 people. And that creates, I would say, its own imbroglio in terms of that the nominees end up getting regarded as trustees. And then they are accountable to the legal heirs, actually, which, comes out of either the will or the personal succession laws. So to me, we can certainly do a lot more on easing the process. And to me, the twin benefits are that we will avoid references to the judiciary. They are already overburdened, and it takes a lot of time and cost, as Harsh also mentioned, and equally make it available to the families in their moment of need, rather than having to wait until a longer period of time.
Okay, so you mentioned a few asset classes. Is it as simple as adding more nominees? Or is there much more, according to you, that needs to be done, Mr. Rao?
So in the white paper, we ended up identifying as many as about 15 measures. And I would break them up into maybe 2 or 3 types. I think one are those that financial service providers can do almost immediately. Things like offering e-nominations, offering KYC validation of the nominees. That can happen almost immediately. The second class, I would say, belongs to where the regulator can do certain things. For instance, making nominations mandatory for all accounts. I think you were also mentioning that, at the stage of account opening is the right time to put a nominee. But very frankly, there is even a choice afforded even in the same forms to not make a nominee. And I think that choice should really disappear, is what the white paper marshals. The third category is very limited intervention that we need from the parliament. And that is really just to simply say that where a nominee and all of these other structural changes have taken place, that the inheritors and therefore the legal and beneficial owners. It's already been done for insurance policies as an asset class. So extending it to other financial assets makes more sense. And, with the various other things that I spoke about, it makes it far more easier.
Okay. I want to talk about the legal process, and like Mr. Rungta pointed out, you are the best person to talk to about this. So various aspects. One, if you have a nomination and if the will is naming somebody else, then as I understand it, the way you said is that the nominee is essentially the guardian, and it is incumbent on the nominee to then pass on the assets. Does that happen very easily? Is it often that that takes place?
So I have ended up coming across, I would say, 3 or 4 situations. There are times the nominee just simply makes it over to the legal heir concerned. There are times that indeed they are at loggerheads, and that usually results in the financial institution also getting dragged into the process, where the legal heir makes the claim right away to the institution, and that usually results in a logjam, because the minute a legal case is initiated, everything freezes up. So we wait until the court passes the order as to whom to release it. Technically, release to the nominee should be sufficient, but again, we are mindful of the claims of the rightful owners as it. So yes, when nominee and the legal heirs are different, and sometimes, as I said, by design, we are almost making it that way. Sorry, I'll just complete that point. For instance, in a bank account, you can have only a single nominee, whereas if you want your legal heirs to sort of be 2 or 3 who inherit the balances in the account, that becomes a challenge really for the nominee, because he then really has to deal with the legal heirs. Whereas the minute you permit as many number of nominees as possible, it can really go to exactly the same person that the consumer intends.
All right. So am I right in assuming, Mr. Rao, that the will is the most important document that you can have in succession? And this is, of course, talking about the fact that, and there's no doubt that that nominee process has to be cleaned up. But I think there are there's a lot of confusion right now as to how one should go about making a will. People assume that it is this very difficult document to make, this legal document. It takes a lot of time, but it's not necessarily like that. What is the ideal way to go about it, and what can you get by with?
Sure. I think, to me, it is practically just about listing out all of your assets and sort of saying that who do you want which to go to. I think if you make it as simple as that, just a listing of assets and specifying who you want that asset to eventually land up with, that is sufficient to, sort of have a will. It requires, of course, 2 witnesses who are not part of the beneficiaries in that will. If you are aged, one would recommend a doctor's certificate which sort of says that you are in good mind and health to be able to, make that will. And it is as simple as it gets. It doesn't require a lawyer. It doesn't require, various other frills and fancies. It's just about expressing your thought process around the asset distribution.
But how does one ensure that it cannot be challenged? So what's stopping somebody who wants to challenge it from saying that this is not something that, if it's handwritten especially, what's stopping someone from saying that somebody else wrote it?
So the reality again is that the law normally expects wills incidentally to be handwritten. So in fact, it's one of the few exclusions where one can't use a digital signature and so on. But having said that, I think then it comes down to that if it is contested, then indeed the beneficiaries have to lead the evidence of establishing that yes, the signature is indeed of the person who executed the will, the testator, and that can become a long drawn-out process, as Harsh was describing. To me, there is no avoiding that if there are challenges. Those processes can easily consume, in our current court situations, about 6 to 7 years on an average, longer if people dig in their heels. So it can be very, very problematic.
What's the worst situation that you've seen, Mr. Rao, in your career?
Regarding wills and or the lack of them and lack of nominations.
Will and succession, succession in general.
So I think really it has been where a person has failed to make nominations. We can see the family members reaching out and making pleas, and yet our hands get tied. So to me, that's the most regretful of situations as a banker, that we are not able to pass on what probably indeed belongs to them for the want of, that simple nomination. And Harsh was right in saying that it's not a will that is important. Even if you make nomination, it at least ensures access to the persons who need it most after your passing. And I think that would be amongst, the most difficult conversations one has with the families, to sort of explain to them and refer them into the judicial and legal process, which doesn't, make it easy either.
It's great that you've put this white paper out, but where does it go from here? Just so that we can understand. We've introduced it and we've spoken about what was suggested. How do we see movement on that?
So, to my mind, as I said, the white paper is something which has these 2-3 components of who can attend to it and who can tackle it. ARIA, I would imagine, will take it forward with the regulators and indeed make it available to industry associations so that their participants can embrace and start making these changes. Some things, as I said, require a legal change, a law change by the parliament. Hopefully, ARIA will take it up with the concerned ministry as well to persuade them. And we look to, the guidance Mr. Kamath gave at the launch event as well, which is that here it is to help consumers. It is to help people in their time of need. And there should be no hesitation about, taking forward these measures. And we are hoping that indeed it can happen as soon as possible across the various fraternities that are existing.
All right. Mr. Rao, thank you so much for joining in. And in fact, for laying out this entire process for us. I hope that more people have this conversation. It's not, like I said, the most comfortable one to have. But thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you again.